take an X-ray. An X-ray.
No, not necessary, sir.
Mr. President, the invasion of a neighbouring country with such calculated force and brutality is a very un-Arab thing to do, isn't it?
هل هو إنجليزي مثلا؟
Would it be an English thing then, for instance?
إذا كان غير عربي.
If it's not an Arab thing to do, would it be a British way?
I don't think it would be a British way, Mr. President, but I'm asking whether it's not an un-Arab thing to do.
لنتفق على أنه كل عمل عدواني هو ليس من شيمنا.
Let's agree that any aggressive act or any act of aggression is not any of our traits. It's not characteristic of us.
ولكن الرد على العدوان جزء من سجيانا.
But it is characteristic of us to repel aggression, to react to aggression.
فالذي حصل أنه العائلة الحاكمة الكويتية قد تآمرت علينا.
What happened was that the ruling family in Kuwait conspired against us.
وحكام الكويت السابقين
But the rulers, the former rulers of Kuwait, knew what to do as the method to be harmful. As merchants themselves, they knew they're good at blackmail, they're good at exploitation, and they're good at destroying their opponents, the party they want to harm.
But, Mr. President, the fact is that before August the 2nd, Kuwait was an independent country and a member of the United Nations.
تماما نحن لا ننكر هذا الجانب.
That's right. We do not deny this part.
القانون العام.
With regard to the general.
ولكن إلى جانب هذه الحقائق أيضا هنالك حقائق أخرى.
Besides these facts, or in addition to these facts, there are other facts.
أيضا تشكل
which also
خلفية قانونية وتاريخية مقابلة.
Which also constitute legal and historical background which may stand opposite to this argument.
أيضا نحن لو نسأل
If we ask international public opinion in general, was it legal for this part of Iraq to have been severed from Iraq in 1913? Was it in accordance with the law?
من المؤكد سيكون الجواب لا.
I'm certain that the answer to this would be no. The severing of Kuwait was not done in any legal way, but it was done according with the law that says might is right.
ثم لو تركنا الأمور جانبا لكي لا ننساق إلى الخلفيات وفق الاتجاهات التي جرى الحديث عنها.
And if we leave things aside so that we may not be dragged into talking about the backgrounds in the manner that we've referred to.
وركزنا على الأحداث القريبة من 2 آب.
And concentrated rather on the events or developments closer to the 2nd of August, immediate before the 2nd of August.
هنالك 3 إشارات تحذير.
There were 3 signals to the rulers of Kuwait telling them that they were playing a very dangerous game when they were perpetrating a very grave and dangerous US conspiracy here.
التحذير الأول حصل
The first warning
في الشهر الخامس
was given in May of this year.
في بغداد عندما انعقد المؤتمر القمة العربي.
Here in Baghdad when we had the Arab Summit Conference.
وحضره جابر الصباح.
Attended by Jabir al-Sabah himself.
وجرى التحذير أمام كل الرؤساء والملوك العرب.
And the warning was expressed in front of all Arab heads of states, kings and presidents.
وقلنا له بأن الذي تقومون به نوع.
We said to him that what you were doing to us was an act of war. And if you do not mean to wage war against us, then you've got to retract from doing what you're doing. Otherwise, if you persist, we are going to consider it as war being waged against us.
وهذا التحذير مسجل صورة وصوت وبحضور كل الملوك والرؤساء العرب.
And this is a warning that was issued in front of cameras, and it has been recorded both in picture and in sound, and it was given in front of all the heads of state.
والتحذير الثاني
The second warning,
والثالث
and the third warning,
حصل بخطاب لصدام حسين في نصف الشهر السابع.
was given in a speech addressed by Saddam Hussein in midst of July.
ومذكرة قدمت للجامعة العربية أيضا في منتصف الشهر السابع.
And as well as in a memorandum presented to the League of Arab States also in mid-July.
فالذي يهجم عليك.
So whoever wages an attack against you, and you have warned him or them against persisting in waging such an attack, then you are left with no other alternative but to seek other means of perpetrating or containing such an attack. And we said in our July warning to them that if you do not halt or stop this conspiracy against us, then we would have to choose other means of stopping it. And this is what had to be done in order to rectify things.
على أي حال هذه الأمور حتى نصل بها إلى فهم إنساني مشترك.
At any rate, these matters, in order to bring them or to come to some mutually acceptable humane understanding or human understanding about them,
فلا بد أن نأخذ قياس واحد.
Let us, we must choose or take or adopt a single criteria. Single standard.
إذا ما قسنا الأمور بقياسات مختلفة.
Because if we adopt double standards or criteria that are not uniform, different standards in addressing these matters,
فسيقع المرء بالخطأ.
We are going to fall into error.
مثلا.
For instance.
عندما نقول هل يجوز أن تهجم دولة على دولة أخرى؟ الجواب لا.
When you ask, is it acceptable for a state to attack another state? Obviously the answer is no.
ولكن
But if each issue is to be addressed in accordance with its own background, then the 2nd of August issue must also be taken against its own background.
أنتم تعرفون مثلا
You know, for instance,
من بين أكثر الدول التي هجمت على دول أخرى هي أمريكا وإنجلترا.
That amongst the countries that have historically perpetrated more aggressions against other states are two, the United States and Britain.
ولكن لو سألنا المسؤولين في
But if we were to ask the officials in the United States or in Britain about why those aggressions were perpetrated, their reply would say, well, those things happened according to their own backgrounds.
فإذا كان هذا الجواب
or circumstance.
صحيح.
So if such a reply would be the right one or acceptable,
فلا بد أن تقاس به الأمور الأخرى أي بمعنى.
So if such a reply would sound acceptable or the right one, then the 2nd of August issue must also be addressed in this way, because it has to be addressed according to its own background, which would mean that we would reach correct and the right conclusions.
Mr. President, when your troops went into Kuwait, did you think that the Americans would stand idly by and do nothing?
لم يخطر على بالنا ابتداء أن نسأل أن يكون هذا هو السؤال الأول.
It didn't occur to us to begin with that this would be the first question that should be asked.
وإنما كان السؤال الأول
But the first question in our minds
هل
was,
نحن على حق أم على باطل في هذا أو ذاك من التصرفات التي نقوم بها.
But the first question in our minds was whether we were right or wrong in this particular act or that particular act which we choose to take.
كان هذا هو السؤال الأول.
This was our first preoccupying question.
وقد أجبنا على هذا السؤال بيقين راسخ بأننا على حق في تصرفنا وفي منهجنا.
And we reached a conclusion with regard to this question, a very firm conclusion, which was that we were correct and right in our approach, in our action.
But now, Mr. President, as a result of that action, you have the world uniquely ranged against you. Even your friends, the Soviets and the French, they say you must get out of Kuwait.
نحن نحترم رأي الذي له رأي.
We respect the view of anybody who may have a view on the subject of Kuwait, because the issue of Kuwait is a complicated one, and we do not presuppose that whoever has a view, that view must not be accepted or wrong.
لأن موضوع الكويت لو أخذ بصورته المجردة.
Because the issue of Kuwait, if it were to be taken on its own, in isolation of its background or circumstance, then it would look as if it were an act of aggression by one state against another, which would make it unacceptable.
أي بمعنى أنه نعم هنالك عدد من الدول.
Yes, there is a number of countries.
وخاصة الدول الكبيرة والصناعية منها بوجه خاص.
The great powers, the big powers, and especially also more particularly the industrialized countries.
تقول هذا على أساس القياس.
They are saying this in accordance with the sort of general legal terms or criteria, and also in accordance, looking at it from their own angle and in accordance with their own interests.
ولكن القول إنه العالم موحد ضد العراق هذا قول غير دقيق.
But to say that the world is unified or united against Iraq is indeed not a correct thing.
ليس هذا انطباعنا نحن فقط.
This is not just our impression.
وإنما هذه هي التصريحات التي
in the statements that and the press of the United States and Britain, statements issued by parties in the United States and Britain, they themselves are sort of voicing out their concern that the unity, so-called unity against Iraq, is perhaps being suffering from a sort of split because, in accordance with the sort of general legal terms on which they based their unity with regard to the Iraqi action, and in accordance with which they also talked about how measures should be taken in order to respond to this action.
لماذا حصل أنه
why have we noticed or found that this sort of so-called unity against Iraq has witnessed some steps being taken as if to retract from it? The fact is that the United States and Britain pushed or goaded the Security Council into adopting hastily taken resolutions against Iraq. And once states of the world or countries began to realize or to see or gauge things in accordance with the historical background of this issue, in accordance with the history of the relationship here, we began to witness changes into their attitudes in accordance with this background, and we began to witness some differences in the attitudes, in accordance with the interests of the countries and also with what is practical as seen by them.
But there are no splits in the Security Council resolutions. There are no splits at all. There are no changes. All the countries say Iraq must withdraw from Kuwait.
أنا لم أقل إن هنالك انشقاق. في الغرب يقولون إن هنالك انشقاق.
I didn't say that there is a split in their position. This is being said in the West. They are saying that there is a split.
إن الذي يهمنا نحن
What is important to us,
سواء كنا عرب أم مسلمين,
as Arabs as well as Muslims,
هو أن يجري الحوار معنا ثم بعد ذلك تتخذ القرارات.
What is important to us is that for dialogue to be conducted with us, and then for resolutions to be taken.
لاحظوا أنه مجلس الأمن كم قرار اتخذ؟ حوالي 10 قرارات.
You will notice now that the Security Council has now adopted almost 10 resolutions.
لم يجري حوار معمق معنا.
So far, no deep dialogue has ever been conducted with us.
لكن حتى يتخذ قرار يلوم به أجهزة إسرائيل على عملها الإجرامي ضد الفلسطينيين. بعث إلى هناك مندوب عنه.
The Security Council set an envoy representing it,
الذي هو وزير خارجية بريطانيا.
The envoy was the راح إلى بسيارة.
نعم، وزير خارجية بريطانيا راح إلى إسرائيل ليتفاوض معها.
None of these resolutions adopted against us was Iraq conducted, was Iraq talked to, or did it receive an invitation for a dialogue. While the resolution, in order to take a resolution to blame Israel for the criminal act, for the crime it perpetrated against the Palestinians, the Security Council went into debates in order to adopt that very mild resolution against Israel. And not only that, but the Security Council we also witnessed the visit made by the British Foreign Minister to Israel in order to negotiate with the Israelis, perhaps even beg the Israelis or appeal to them to accept this resolution. And in spite of all this, Israel continued to reject the resolution, the very mild resolution adopted by the Security Council against it. So that, you see, this is the kind of double standard that can be seen in the behavior here of the Security Council towards two issues. The difference of time between which is only a matter of 2.5 months. By countries that claim to themselves as being great countries, great powers that are democratic, powers that work for freedom and liberty to prevail in the world. You see an irony there between these two situations.
لنعطيك مثال آخر.
Let me give you another example.
إسرائيل عندما احتلت فلسطين والأراضي العربية المحتلة.
When Israel occupied Palestine along with the other occupied Arab territories.
وعندما ضمت القدس والجولان.
And when it annexed Jerusalem, Quds and the Golan Heights by official decree.
كم من دول العالم أيدتها في هذا القرار؟
How many countries of the world supported these Israeli decisions or acts?
Not many countries of the world support.
ما الذي حصل؟
What happened?
لم يؤيدها دول عديدة في هذا المجال.
ولكن لم يحصل شيء.
But nothing happened.
ما زالت القدس محتلة
Jerusalem is still occupied and annexed according to an Israeli decree. Annexed to
أليس في هذا مفارقة وقياسات
مزدوجة تجاه العرب والمسلمين؟ Double standards clearly there in the behavior towards the Arabs and towards Muslims.
أليس في هذا لوحده
Don't you find only in this
المفارقة والظلم
the measure, the high degree of double standard and injustice perpetrated by the West? And by the West I mean the Western administrations against the Arabs and the Muslims.
But surely, Mr. President, what the Israelis did is no measure of what a country like Iraq should do. And the fact is that the world now says that you must leave Kuwait. Are you prepared to do that? Will you do that?
نحن مستعدون لأن نجري حوارا معمقا حول مستلزمات الأمن في منطقتنا.
We are ready to enter into a deep dialogue as to the requirements for security in our region.
قد لا تكون تعرف بأنه
You may not know
الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية قد حذرت رسميا من قبلنا في أواخر عام 89
was officially warned by us in towards the end of 1989
بأن عليها أن تكف عن التآمر على نظامنا بعد أن كنا قد تأكدنا بوثائق كافية بأن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية تتآمر على العراق.
That we want them that they should stop perpetrating conspiracies against us, because we had become certain that conspiracies were being perpetrated against us according to this is documented, and we were firmly sure about that.
ثم أن الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية قد تم تحذيرها من رؤساء عرب.
And the United States was also warned by Arab heads of states.
وللرئيس بوش نفسه.
And the warning was conveyed to President Bush himself in person.
في شهر حزيران الماضي.
In June last.
من المخاطر التي تنبني على تآمرهم على حياة صدام حسين.
He was warned against the dangers that would result from their conspiracies against the personal life of Saddam Hussein.
تعرف لماذا يحصل هذا؟
Do you know why this was done?
No, I do not.
لأن النظام في العراق لا يقبل بأن
because the government of Iraq would not accept for Israel to continue occupying Arab lands and turning the Palestinians into a homeless people and treating them in the bad way and unjust way that it is doing.
ولأن العراق يطالب
and because Iraq
بالعزة والرفاه للعرب وللمسلمين.
continues to demand for dignity, prosperity and happiness for the Arabs and Muslims.
ولأنه يدعو إلى أن يستفيد
and because Iraq
العرب
calls for the Arabs to
وفقراء المسلمين من الثروة التي تبدد في غير ميادينها.
and because Iraq calls for the wealth that is being squandered in the wrong places to be geared towards the benefit of the Arabs and the Muslims.
إذا كانت الأمور بهذه الكيفية المعقدة فلماذا لا يحترم العالم رأي العرب؟
If things or matters were this complicated, as long as the issue is so complicated, why is it that parties concerned and the world is not sitting down to conduct dialogue, to talk, in order to resolve all the problems connected with this situation and find the right solutions, the solutions that would bring real, genuine peace to the area and establish stability, firm stability for it.
إذا نحن ندعو للحوار.
Therefore, you see that we call for a dialogue.
وندعو لحل شامل لكل قضايا المنطقة لأنها مترابطة.
In order to find a comprehensive solution to all the problems of the region.
وطرحنا لهذا الغرض مشروع
متكامل
في 12 آب.
These problems are interconnected, and we announced an initiative to that effect on the 12th of August.
Well, Mr. President, the answer to that is that the world says that you must withdraw first from Kuwait. But may I put another question to you? How has the invasion of Kuwait helped the Palestinians? Because it's put them in a totally impossible position, and it hasn't helped them at all.
ماذا يحصل الآن؟
What is happening now?
هنالك تحول عميق حصل بعد 2 آب في الرأي العام العالمي وبالذات على مستوى السياسيين الكبار الذين هم ليسوا في السلطة المباشرة في دولهم.
There has been a deep change happening since the 2nd of August on the level of the international public opinion, and particularly amongst high-ranking or big officials who are not really in political power.
فلأول مرة
for the first time
يجري الحديث عن ترابط القضايا الاجتماعية والاقتصادية والسياسية فيما بينها.
You see now there is talk of the interconnection or interrelatedness between economic, political, social issues in the region.
ولأول مرة يجري
الحديث. For the first time you see talk
بصورة عميقة
or you hear talk in a deep way
عن انعكاس قضية فلسطين على كل المشاكل في المنطقة.
Of the reflections that the issue of Palestine has on all the other issues of the region.
ولأول مرة
And for the first
يجري
time,
الحديث بتركيز واهتمام عميق.
we hear talk in a concentrated and deep manner,
والقول بأنه ما لم تحل قضية فلسطين
in which people are saying that unless the problem of Palestine is resolved,
فسوف يبقى يضاف على قائمة مشاكل المنطقة
there will always
جديدة.
be added, in addition that is to the existing problems of the region, new problems that will come.
إذن
So you see,
فإن قضية فلسطين الآن أصبحت
the Palestinian question has become now
قريبة من أن تكون في الصدارة.
close to being in the forefront of the issues.
وعندما تكون في الصدارة
And once it is there in the forefront,
فلا بد أن تأخذ اهتمام
then it
قضية
is
الصدارة.
necessary, then it will become incumbent or imperative that this particular issue shall acquire the significance and the attention of being the first.
وعند ذلك ستعطى من
And
الاهتمام
then the attention that will be given to this issue
بمستوى هذا الوصف
will be compatible with its place, with the way I'm describing it.
وستقدم لها الحلول
And the solutions for it shall be presented
بمستوى وزن هذا الوصف.
in the manner that will be compatible with the weight of this description.
هذا أولا.
This is first.
والشيء الثاني
Second thing,
أنت لا تستطيع أن تحرم السارق
you cannot
من السرقة إذا كان هنالك من هو خائن في داخل بيتك.
you cannot
أي بمعنى متواطئ مع السارق.
you cannot really prevent or halt the thief from doing his robbery or committing his robbery as long as there is in your own house a traitor, indeed someone who is collaborating with the thief for that theft robbery to take place.
فعندما يكون في البيت العربي الإسلامي
So if there is in the Arab Islamic house
ناس ينحدرون إلى الرذيلة بمستوى
if there are people
العائلة التي كانت تحكم
who
الكويت
were prepared to sink into vice as deeply as the ruling family of Kuwait used to do.
ومن هم بمستواهم
Not only the ruling family of Kuwait, but those others who are of their kind.
ويتواطؤون مع أمريكا والصهيونية
And also collaborating with the United States and Zionism
ضد قضية فلسطين.
against the question of Palestine, against the cause of the Palestinians.
فكيف بإمكاننا أن نتصور أن العالم سيهتم بقضية
So how
فلسطين؟
can we imagine that the world is going in any way to pay any attention to the question of Palestine?
But surely, Mr. President, you can't be seriously telling me that Kuwait was invaded by Iraq to help the Palestinian cause.
أنا كل كلام اللي قلت لك إياه جدي.
Every word I have said was a serious one. Everything I said was serious.
وأقصد بالشكل الذي تفهمني تماما.
And I mean to say in the manner that you've understood me clearly.
أن المؤامرة من قبل حكام الكويت ما كانت ستجري علينا لولا موقفنا من قضية فلسطين.
I'm saying to you clearly in the manner that that I think you understood, which is that the conspiracy perpetrated by the rulers of Kuwait initially against us wouldn't have been perpetrated had Iraq not adopted the position it did with regard to the Palestinian question.
وحتى أقدم لك دليل يريحك.
In order to give you a proof or some evidence which will comfort you, which will satisfy you,
سأزودك بشريط صوتي لتسجيل صوت الملك فهد.
I shall provide you with a sound recording of a conversation conducted of this King Fahd, a telephone conversation.
وهذا حديث جرى في أوائل تموز.
A telephone conversation which was made early in July.
في 9 تموز.
On the 9th of July, to be exact.
أي قبل 2 آب.
Which is prior, of course, to the 2nd of August.
يتحدث فيه بألم عن موقف صدام حسين من إسرائيل.
A recording which will show you how King Fahd was talking with some pain about the position adopted by Saddam Hussein towards Israel.
ويتحدث عن حسني كيف أنه رجل جيد.
In which King Fahd talks about Husni of Egypt as a good man.
لأنه له موقف آخر من إسرائيل.
Because he has adopted a different stand towards Israel.
وبذلك أقدم لك الدليل الذي من خلاله تعرف ما هو
through
صلة قضية فلسطين بأمن المنطقة ككل، بما في ذلك أمن أشخاصها الشرفاء والوطنيين والمؤمنين.
Through this, I will have provided you with some evidence as to how interrelated the issue of Palestine with the overall security of the region, and indeed of the security with the security of certain people there in this region.
Mr. President, I'd like to move the discussion on a little bit. How can you justify the atrocities committed by Iraqi troops in Kuwait in your name?
هل اطلعت أنت على الفضائح؟
أعمال غير قاسية، أعمال فظيعة يعني.
هل اطلعت على جانب منها؟
Have you seen these atrocities yourself or any of them?
I have not seen these, but may I quote you some of reports, Mr. President? One report speaks of scores of people being tortured and hanged at Kuwait University for opposing the annexation of their country. Another report speaks of 15-year-old boys being shot. An American woman married to a Kuwaiti talks about a pregnant woman being disemboweled. These reports have been coming out of Kuwait for some time. Do you know about these reports? Do they worry you? Have you heard about them?
من المؤكد بأنني لم أسمع بمثل هذه الأعمال.
What is certain is that I have not heard of any such acts being done.
يعني ممكن مثل ما يوميا الإذاعات الغربية تحشو عقل المواطن الغربي بأمور كاذبة.
It is possible that in the same way as
أن يطلع تقرير كاذب من الكويت حول مسائل من التي تصفها أنت.
It is possible, of course, that in the same way as the Western media is trying to fill the minds of people everywhere daily with lies about the situation, then by the same notion, it is possible also that some false report may come out of Kuwait claiming or alleging the sort of things being done that you have described.
ولكن دعني أقول لك شيء.
But let me say something to you.
هنالك في محافظة الكويت.
Now there is in the province of Kuwait
الذي يفتح النار على الجنود يفتحون عليه النار ويقتلوه.
There is an instruction which is valid there. Whoever opens fire at our soldiers, they will open fire back. They will respond and they will kill. Whoever opens
وفي
fire.
نفس الوقت
They will shoot to kill. At the same time,
عندما يسرق عراقي من بغداد
any Iraqi belonging from Baghdad perpetrating a theft or a robbery against a house in the province of Kuwait,
ويلقى القبض عليه متلبسا بالجريمة,
and he is caught red-handed,
يحال إلى المحاكم.
he will be tried and he will be prosecuted.
والقانون العراقي
And the Iraqi law
يحكم بالإعدام على قضية من هذا النوع.
Dictates the death sentence in such instances.
وهنالك عدد من العراقيين من محافظة بغداد وربما يكونوا من محافظة البصرة أو ربما يكونوا من محافظة من محافظات أخرى
or they may have been from Basra and or any other province.
أعدموا لأنهم سرقوا من دور سكن الشعب في الكويت.
have in fact been sentenced to death because they have committed robbery against the houses of people in the province of Kuwait.
هذا حصل.
This has happened.
لماذا لا تتحدث عنه الصحف
العربية؟ Why does the Western press ignore this fact?
لأنه يعكس الجانب العدل.
Because it has been ignored because it reflects the just and disciplined manner in our position.
Mr. President, these reports of atrocities, you see, are encouraged by the fact that you have sealed Kuwait off from the rest of the world. Why don't you let us go in and see for ourselves whether these reports are true?
أنت محق في جانب مما ذكرت.
Yes, you're right. You're partly right there.
في جانب مما ذكرت.
Partly right there.
ولكن لابد أن تسعفك الذاكرة أنه الآن محافظة الكويت مستهدفة عسكريا من قبل الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية والضالعين معه.
But you must remember that the province of Kuwait is now a military target for the U.S. forces there and for the forces that have allied themselves with the U.S. forces.
وهي ومقترباتها من محافظة البصرة.
So the whole province of Kuwait, as well as the approaches to the province of Kuwait,
تهيأ كمسرح عمليات متكامل لمواجهة الغزو المحتمل.
Are now being prepared as a sort of full-fledged battlefield theater, in order to, in anticipation of any offensive that may be waged, any attack.
وأنت تعرف بأنه في ظروف كهذه.
And you will know that under such circumstances,
الدول تتخذ إجراءات تمنع فيها الصحفيين.
Countries usually take measures
من الاقتراب من المواضع العسكرية.
Which include the prevention of journalists from coming too close to military installations, military
والشعب البريطاني على سبيل المثال يعرف هذه الحقائق لأنه عاشها في الحرب العالمية الثانية.
And British people, for instance, would know such details fully well because they lived it during the Second World War.
Can I move the discussion on to another subject, Mr. President? Does it worry you that the term Iraqi guest has now come to mean detaining people or detaining a person against his will?
هو من المؤكد بأنه صعب تفهم ضيافتنا المعلنة بحقيقتها كما هي.
It is certain that the kind of hospitality that we are extending would be difficult to understand. The true meaning of this hospitality would be difficult to understand in that circumstance.
لأنه الأجانب هنا الموجودين ممنوعين من السفر.
Because of the fact that foreigners that are here now as guests are prevented from traveling.
ومستضافين رغم إرادتهم في المناطق
and they're being hosted against their will in installations, in vital installations here in our country, the purpose of which, or the objective of which, is to try and halt any acts that may be perpetrated against these places and then halt the war.
هذا لم يحصل في العراق فقط في الحروب.
This is a measure that has not just been taken here in Iraq. This is not the first time to.
وعلى سبيل المثال.
For instance.
لابد أنكم تعرفون أن أمريكا في الحرب العالمية الثانية
the United States during the Second World War
حجزت حتى رعاياها من الأصل الياباني.
Put even its own citizens of Japanese origin into special encampments.
أي اعتقلتهم وحددت حريتهم.
Indeed, which meant actually that they were detained in these encampments without not enjoying their full freedom.
وأشك أنها عاملتهم كما نعامل نحن البريطاني أو الأمريكي أو الياباني.
And I don't think, I have doubts whether the United States at the time treated those people in the Japanese encampments in the gentle way, as gently as we are treating our guests, the British French
لماذا نسميهم ضيوف؟
Why are we calling these people guests?
لأنه عدا
Because apart from the fact that part of their liberty is being halted from them, it's not being given to them, they are being granted every way of hospitality that the government can give.
ولو اطلعت على
And if you see some of the requests that have been sent to us by them, you would see for yourself how luxurious and detailed some of these requests are, which would reflect the kind of treatment that they are receiving, which would be a reflection of the kind of situation they are living. And in spite of the fact that we are living a rather special sort of circumstance, but in any case, we usually grant all their requests.
Mr. President, they don't, I'm sure they're pleased with your hospitality, but they don't want hospitality, they want their freedom. And they charge that you are violating their fundamental human rights and keeping them here in not allowing them to leave. That's what they want, their freedom.
تمام هذا هو الذي يريدونه.
Exactly. This
ونحن هذا الذي نتمناه لهم.
And it is exactly what we wish for them.
نحن معهم في الذي يريدونه. نحن لا نتضايق من هذا.
We agree with that. We agree with what they want.
لأنه هو حقهم الإنساني.
We are not perturbed by this demand on their part, because it is their human right.
ظروف العدوان الأمريكي
But the circumstance of the US aggression, that is
تحالف تاتشر مع بوش هي التي أوصلت
and the Thatcher-Bush alliance that is being waged against us is the factor that has brought things to the level in which we live now. This is the problem.
إنه نحن سألنا أنفسنا وأجبنا.
We asked ourselves and we came to the conclusion.
كيف نضع عقبات أمام
as to how to impede
الانفعال السريع
any unwise act.
وكيف نعطي للعقل فرصة.
Any hasty, unwise act, and how we should create the right opportunity, the chance.
ليكون للتفاهم وللحوار فرصة.
For dialogue and understanding to have its chance.
فعملنا الكثير.
So we have done a lot.
ومن بين ما اجتهدنا بأنه مفيد.
We have done a great deal, and amongst the things that we thought would be useful
هو أن نمنع عدد من الأجانب
was for us to try to prevent a number of the foreigners
من السفر
from traveling.
وهكذا ترى مثلا أنه النساء الأطفال
I say a number because you see that we let the women and children
أخرجناهم مع كل
go
العوامل التي نستطيع عليها في تقديم الرعاية والحفاظ.
We let them go with all the care and attention that we could provide for them.
وكل ما وجدنا أنه بدأ الحوار
and whenever
والعقل يأخذ طريقه
whenever we felt that
حتى لو كان بشكل
dialogue and reason began to sort of surface or find its way through or peep its way through, even though it's not really very serious, you see that whenever we feel that this is happening in any way,
وفي بريطانيا المثل القريب على هذا زيارة السيد هيث.
We would take measures to let some of them go. And with regard to Britain, the most recent example was done when Mr. Heath visited
ولو
us.
سألت الضيوف التي تسمونهم
If you ask the guests whom you call or describe as hostages
الذين جاءكم إلى بريطانيا، هل طلب العراق منكم شيء لقاء يعني فك القيد عن حرية السفر؟
هو يصفهم أيضا مسجونين سيدي.
نعم على حال إيش ما يصفهم. أنا إذا جاوب يعني لو سألت الذين سمح لهم بالسفر إلى بريطانيا مع السيد هيث مثلا أو مع المستشار الألماني السابق السيد برانت، لو سألتهم أنه هل طلب العراق منكم شيء عندما فسح المجال لكم بالسفر؟
You see these people whom you describe as hostages, if you ask them back home, those who went back with Mr. Heath or the group that went with Mr.
سيجيبونك بأنه لم
If you
يطلب
ask
شيء.
them, did Iraq ask anything in return for their release? Then the reply would be no, that nothing was
إذن
asked.
عندما لا يطلب العراق
So
لقاء
when Iraq does not ask for anything in return for their travel, for their going,
ليسوا ب
so this means obviously that they are not hostages.
ولو سألتهم هل وجه العراق لكم تهمة وأنتم ممنوعين من السفر؟
If you ask them, did Iraq or the Iraqis charge you with anything while you were there, prevented from travel?
وهل وجه لكم أسئلة استجوابية؟
Did the Iraqi authorities, or were you ever interrogated in Iraq?
سيجيبون كلا.
They would say no.
إذن هم ليسوا بمسجونين.
So they are not prisoners.
فإذن وصف الحجز والسجن
So the description,
لا ينطبق عليهم.
the description of these people, to describe these people as either hostages or prisoners, wouldn't apply actually.
وقد لا تنطبق عليهم صفة الضيافة عندما تدخل إلى الموضوع من المدخل النقدي الذي تفضلت وتحدثت عنه.
Although again, to describe them as guests may not be fully applicable in the critical manner or in the critical approach which you have adopted in your question.
Well, it was not intended to be a particularly critical approach, Mr. President. It was intended, again, to refer you to Islamic tradition. Guests are allowed to come and go as they please.
نعم يسمح لهم بالمجيء ويسمح لهم بالمغادرة.
Yes, they are allowed to come and they are allowed to go.
ولكن إذا اقتضى ظرف معين
But if a
قد لا يسمح لهم بالمغادرة الفورية.
But if a certain circumstance dictates it or calls for it, then they may not be allowed to go immediately.
Mr. President, Mrs. Thatcher of Great Britain says that even if you withdraw from Kuwait, you must be made to pay compensation for the damage that you have caused there. Do you take that warning seriously? She says you have been warned.
على أي حال عندما تقول السيدة تاتشر هذا الكلام بجد فمعناه أنه جد.
In any case, when Mrs. Thatcher says anything like this seriously, then of course it has to be taken seriously.
ولكن لأبرز الأمر أمامك هكذا.
But let me put the question to you, or the matter to you in this way.
السيدة تاتشر تقول هذا.
Mrs. Thatcher says this.
هل استشارت العالم الذي تقول عنه بأنه ضدنا؟ هل استشارت العالم بمثل هذا الرأي قبل أن تقول هذا القول؟
Has she consulted with the world, which she describes as being against us? Has she consulted the world before she said this statement against us?
There's a lot of support in the world for that view.
لا لا.
No, that's not the case.
رجل يعني في موقع محترم لخدمة الحقيقة.
You are a man in a very special position in the service of truth.
وأنا يعني رجل من الشرق الأوسط ولكني مطلع.
I am a man who, yes, I belong to the Middle East, but I also know things.
رجل عربي مسلم وربما هنالك
I'm an Arab
في أوساط الإدارة البريطانية لا يحترمون هذا الوصف.
And maybe there are people in the British administration who disdain this description.
ولكن أنا مطلع.
Who do not respect this description, but I am well informed. I am informed.
ولذلك القول إنه هنالك دعم للسيدة تاتشر بقولها هذا.
So to say that Mrs. Thatcher has support in saying this
في هذا الوصف لأنه لم يحصل.
Is not really
لم يصرح
true. I cannot
أحد من
accept
رؤساء
this
الدول بالذي
because it
قالته
has not
السيدة
happened.
تاتشر.
No official in any other country has issued any statement supporting what Mrs. Thatcher has said. So matters are like this now.
تاتشر
situation is like this.
حملت شنطتها وسافرت إلى السيد بوش.
Took her suitcase and flew to Mr. Bush.
والتقوا وحدهم.
And they met alone. They had a private session.
أو أحد وياهم.
Or maybe
لا أعلم.
a meeting attended by others. I don't know.
وقرر.
And they decided.
أن يغزوان الأراضي المقدسة للمسلمين والعرب.
They decided to invade this territories of sacred places, the territories that are sacred to both the Arabs and the Muslims.
وأعلن بأنهم يذهبان هناك ليدافعا عن السعودية من المخاطر المحتملة من العراق.
Of course.
هذا كذب كبير.
Of course, they announced that they were coming here in order to defend Saudi Arabia against any Iraqi danger, and of course there was a big lie there.
ثم بعد ذلك.
And then after that.
طلب من العالم أن يؤيدهما.
They appealed to the world. They called on the world to support them.
فالبعض أيد، البعض رفض.
Parts of the world supported them, and some didn't. Some refused.
البعض سكت.
Some kept quiet.
والبعض هدد من قبل السيدة.
And some parties, some countries were threatened by Mrs. Thatcher.
مباشرة.
Directly.
نحن قرأنا تهديداته.
We read her threats.
من قبل السيد بوش ونحن
And they were
قرأنا
threatened by Mr. Bush too, and we read those threats.
ومن قبل وزرائهما.
And they were threatened by the ministers or the secretaries of states of both Mrs. Bush and Mrs. Thatcher
هددت
and
إيطاليا.
Mr. Bush.
اليابان. ألمانيا.
Italy, Japan, and Germany were threatened.
يعني هاي دول
So you
كبيرة.
see, these are not small countries; these are big countries, and they were threatened.
فشلون تريدهم يحترمون الدول العربية أو الإسلامية؟
So how can you expect them to respect the Arab
إذا
and
كانوا لا
Islamic countries
يحترمون ألمانيا
when
ولا
they do not
يحترمون
respect
اليابان
Germany,
ولا
they do not
يحترمون
respect Japan,
إيطاليا
they do not respect Italy,
ويتعاملون معهم من خلال المذياع
and
فيما
they deal
ينبغي
with
أن
Japan,
يقومون به
Italy,
في
and
الميدان
Germany through the
العسكري
radio.
والمالي
غير ذلك. When they want to talk to them in the field of in the military, financial, economic field, through the radio. How can you expect them to respect countries of the Arab world and the Muslim world?
ألم تقرأ هذا؟
Didn't you read these things?
أنا قرأته. أنا المواطن
I read these things.
المستضعف في الشرق الأوسط. أنا قرأت.
I am the helpless. I'm a helpless citizen of the Middle East. مستضعف سيد.
فأنا أفترض أنك قرأت هذا واطلعت عليه.
I suppose that you have seen these
مستضعف
statements.
ما تعرف شنو المستضعف.
والله سيدي مستضعف مو يعني
سيدي لا حول له ولا قوة.
نعم بالضبط.
بهالمعنى. Yes, helpless.
يعني لا هو
لا يهدد سيدي.
له حول وله قوة، أي بمعنى أن الله معه. يعني أن قوتنا في قوة الله سبحانه وتعالى. لذلك نحن لسنا ضعفاء، وإنما من قبل الآخرين ينظر لنا نظرة استضعاف.
I must, His Excellency used a word which we need to be very specific about. I used helpless to describe it, but I wasn't really very certain about it. What he meant was that we are people who are not weak in ourselves because we have the strength of God behind us, but who may be looked by others to be weak. We sort of looked or viewed to be weak by others.
From what you said this evening, you have no intentions of withdrawing your troops from Kuwait. Does that mean that this region is on the brink of another devastating war?
أنا تحدثت عن أهمية أن ننظر للأمور نظرة شمولية وليس نظرة تجزئية.
I talked about the importance of a comprehensive approach, to all issues in the region, and not the fragmented sort of approach.
وأهمية أن يحل الحوار محل السلاح.
And I talked about the importance of dialogue replacing the approach of dialogue, replacing the approach of the arms or the weapons.
وأن يحل التطمين محل التهديد.
And the importance of allowing security, trust to replace threats and intimidation.
وأن يستجاب للعقل الراجح وليس للرغبات الجامحة المتسرعة.
And the importance responding to reason rather than to jerky, hastily taken decisions or jerky desires.
إذا ما استذكرت الأطراف المعنية كل هذا.
If all parties concerned were to remember the importance of these facts
وجلست على طاولة
and sat together on around one table,
فنحن على ثقة بأنها ستكون قادرة على تقديم حلول جدية
we are confident that these parties
وعميقة لكل القضايا وفي المقدمة منها قضية فلسطين.
will reach serious and deep solutions to all the issues, in the forefront of which will be the Palestinian question.
وعند ذلك سيجري بحث ما يسمى بأزمة الخليج ضمن سياقها الطبيعي.
And in this situation, in a circumstance such as that, the so-called Kuwaiti issue will be discussed in the right course of action.
وعند ذلك يتحقق السلام للجميع في المنطقة.
In such a situation, peace will have been achieved for everyone in the region.
وتصبح المنطقة وأهلها سعداء.
And the region will have become, the region and its peoples will have become happy.
ونكون قدمنا خدمة كبيرة للسلام العالمي.
And we will have done international peace a great service.
الله يجنبنا الحروب والحرب وويلاتها. ويجنب البشرية.
May God spare us wars and the scourge of wars, and may God spare all mankind the calamities of war.
Mr. President, thank you.
سيادة الرئيس شكرا جزيلا.
أنا مسرور
I'm happy to have had this
أشكركم حقا.
dialogue with you. I thank you truly.
Thank you, Mr. President.
شكرا سيادة الرئيس.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much. Very much.